Hey y'all, welcome back to Three-Peat Sports. I am your host, Ian Monhay, here for the reveal of the number 3 team in my NBA 2025 preseason power rankings, the Cleveland Cavaliers, recording for Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and for the first time in this series on YouTube. And I'm looking forward to talking about the best team in the Eastern Conference according to my rankings. If you guys have enjoyed this series so far, please leave a 5-star review, leave a like on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. And share around to get this out to more NBA fans who are really excited for this upcoming regular season that's going to start on Tuesday, October 21st, with the 2 slated games being the Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder, as well as the LA Lakers and Golden State Warriors. Without further ado, let's just dive into our number 1 ranked Eastern Conference team, being the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that went on a historic run to start the season last year, starting off 15-0, winning 64 games and capturing the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and then getting ousted in the second round by the Indiana Pacers in 5 games. A very down way to end the season, but with all of the injuries that have happened in the Eastern Conference, they catapult themselves back to the number 1 rated team in the Eastern Conference, a team that is definitely undergoing some change as well, with the loss of Ty Jerome being the most notable. Their 6th man of the year candidates, their breakout player off of the bench. Very important piece for them. He leaves for the Memphis Grizzlies to be the backup point guard over there behind Ja Morant, but he's probably going to start a couple of games as they're going to be without Ja Morant to start the season. Some of their other smaller losses being Javonte Green, who was a midseason pickup, Chuma Okeke, a former first-round pick 6 years ago out of Auburn, was with the Orlando Magic for a little bit. He signed late last season, but he goes overseas instead. Tristan Thompson, he returned last season on a 1-year contract. He remains unsigned. He was one of their 3rd, 4th-string backup centers as well as Isaac Okoro, the number 4 overall pick 5 years ago, a defensive-minded guard/wing at about 6'5", 6'6". They end up trading him to the Chicago Bulls, with their real notable acquisitions being in the form of Lonzo Ball, the player that they acquired in the Isaac Okoro trade. They had 2 draft picks that they used on Tyrese Proctor, the number 49 overall pick, as well as Saliu Niang with the 58th overall pick. He's going to play overseas. He's going to be a draft and stash prospect for the Cavaliers. They had brought back Sam Merrill, one of their shooters off of the bench, a 4-year, $38 million extension there. And they also brought back from the Atlanta Hawks Larry Nance Jr., a backup center of theirs for the last couple of years. At least he was a player for Cleveland a few years ago. He was one of the main rotational centers, and he's back here on a 1-year minimum contract after a season in Atlanta where he didn't play a whole lot of minutes over there. But for the most part, running it back with this same core 4 that features Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. To start the season, they are going to be without 2 players, being Darius Garland and Max Strus. Garland is out with toe surgery. I don't remember when he's supposed to be back. I could definitely look that up, though, really quickly. He had a toe surgery back in July, and he should be back around the start of the season. I know that he'll be out for the first game or 2 of the season, but he has been ramping up in his overall workload in practice and in training camp. He participated in a scrimmage a few days ago. But Max Strus is the other starter that is going to be out for the start of the season, and I need to remember his injury as well. It could be an ankle sprain, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a foot injury. He was in a walking boot for a little bit. He had a surgery on his foot in the middle of the offseason. He still has a lengthy recovery process, as he'll miss the first couple of weeks of the season there. But a very important piece there as well, as far as a shooting option goes and being a reliable starter for however many years now with Cleveland and over in Miami as well. A big loss there. So we're going to see for the start of the season a lot more Donovan Mitchell ball, player that we're going to begin the conversation with. He is their Star shooting guard, 6'2", 215 pounds, came over in a trade with the Utah Jazz not too long ago, I believe 3 seasons ago now, and was the leading scorer on this Cleveland Cavaliers team last season at about 24 points a night, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, about a steal a night as well on 44, 37, 82 shooting splits. Very solid numbers for the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. What was surprising is that looking through his overall statistics, he has dropped in terms of the volume of shots per game. He went from 21 in his first year in Cleveland to about 20 in last season, and then this past season going ahead and going down to 19. So about a shot per game taken away from his overall averages. And I think this season in particular came in the form of implementing a more all-around dispersion of shot attempts to the rest of the team, having other players have larger roles on offense, particularly in the form of Evan Mobley, and we'll get to him soon. Donovan Mitchell is a high-volume three-point shooter, averaging about 9 three-point attempts a night, has consistently averaged about 8 attempts per night, whether that's off the dribble, off of the catch. He does a really good job in those areas as far as shooting goes. Very, very athletic, really knows how to bend around and snake pick and rolls and really get to the rim. He has this sort of crossover hesitation move that I have really liked out of him. He developed that over in Utah, and it has been a staple for him coming over to Cleveland as well. As far as defense goes, he is undersized as well, and I think that's always been the main concern about this team as far as the backcourt goes. When you have Darius Garland standing at 6'1" and Donovan Mitchell at 6'2", and definitely on the skinnier side. But when you take a look at the likes of a Donovan Mitchell, a player who came into the league as somebody who was a very solid option as far as defense goes, was very physical and definitely aggressive in his defensive play and his overall performance. He was not the worst defender in the world on that team. He definitely plays the role of a chaser better, going ahead and getting steals on the run and just chasing around screens, which he isn't bad at in that area either. He was graded out as a C+ graded ball screen navigator according to B-Ball Index, the main site that I use for all of the deeper analytics as far as their overall performance goes, and it definitely checks out there. He's definitely a player who chases all around the court and gets steals and puts this team out in transition often. He's one of the main players that puts this team out on the break, whether he becomes the playmaker in that role or the finisher on those breaks. He is a player who thrives on playing fast and chasing all around the court. And I think that's a positive thing when you're looking at a Cleveland Cavaliers team like this that has a lot of good defensive options surrounding him and Darius Garland. It allows them to focus a little bit more on an offensive-minded role. Mitchell has been everything that they have asked for him to be ever since coming over to Cleveland. And in this past season, thrived a lot more as an off-ball option, which is a very nice thing considering that they had been having a difficult time with implementing an offense around Donovan Mitchell for the last several years. And I think that is because of the fact that he is so used to having a heliocentric offense centered around him. Dating back to his time over at Utah, he was a player who didn't have many other players around him who created well. Yeah, you had Mike Conley at 32, 33, 34 years old, definitely beyond his prime as far as scoring goes. And then you had Bojan Bogdanovic, who was definitely decent throughout the large majority of his career. Definitely not in that same realm of, second, third options like how a Garland is or a Mobley is on this team. He was essentially tasked of being the number 1 scorer in every single aspect, and perhaps even the number 2 over in Utah. Just really hammering home the point that a lot was on his plate over in Utah, and he had become so accustomed to playing a bunch of hero ball over in Utah, especially in playoff settings. And then you take a look at the likes of his overall performance in Cleveland. The first 2 seasons, it was definitely like that. There was a power struggle there between him and Darius Garland, so much so that before last season, we were seeing a ton of rumors regarding the potential of Darius Garland requesting a trade if they were to re-sign Donovan Mitchell or vice versa. And both of them re-signed, both of them stuck it through and have really bought into their overall roles in the regular season. Kenny Atkinson did a fantastic job implementing his system here that featured a lot more movement and a lot more dispersion within shot attempts on the offensive side of the ball. In the playoffs, there was a little bit more of a transition this last playoffs as far as a lot more heliocentric ball there. And I think a lot of that centered around the fact that Darius Garland was dealing with his toe injury. Now, he has been injured for the last couple of playoffs now, or at least playing hurt, and that results in a little bit more of a shift in how they're going about their offensive process. I would like for the process to still remain consistent, especially given that there is another player waiting in the wickets in Evan Mobley, just somebody who's ready to break out as far as offense goes. And that's something that I would like to continue to see develop as they continue to go through the Eastern Conference and go through the playoffs. I want to see similar process as to how they go about their regular season to the postseason. I understand that Mitchell is going to be one of the leading shot takers, but I want to see a lot more Mobley and see what he is able to do in a larger playoff setting, like how they were last year in a second round series against the Indiana Pacers. But again, Garland has been hurt a lot of these playoffs, and we'll transition over to him, who definitely has his overall deficiencies as a player as far as his defense goes. He is very much sticks out very much as a smaller player, a much more slender guy. I want to say that he's 6'1" and maybe sub 200 pounds. Yeah, 6'1", 192 pounds, 25-year-old guard, and he is a player who definitely has a difficult time of matching the strength that comes with some of the other guards. He's not bad in most scenarios, and I think that's because he has some of the worst players in the league that he is guarding, at least on the starting five aspect. He's guarding the worst player in the starting five, and I think that leads to interesting scenarios where he's definitely good at digging. He's definitely one that it runs around the court as well. There's some positive aspects to him, but he's absolutely going to stick out, especially if you're going to continue to play him hurt. And that has been a constant scenario throughout the last 3 postseasons, especially when he was hurt. They had been targeting him crazily because they know that he wasn't able to move well, wasn't able to function the same as he would if he was healthy. Him having a healthy playoff run and being able to withstand the physicality of a playoff run is going to be very important to their quest at making the NBA Finals, which should be the expectation for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. Not bad as a chaser either. I think that's a decent role for him as far as defense goes. You would prefer Garland to be in that role instead of a Mitchell. I think Mitchell could be an asset as far as point of attack goes, but I think their size is going to continue to be an issue defensively in the backcourt. But as far as offense goes, they are very, very elite. Mitchell in his own right as a really electric shot creator and shot maker, one of the leading scorers in playoff history as far as career averages go in the playoffs. And then as far as Darius Garland goes, is a player who plays a lot more of that point guard role. Somebody who is one of the better playmakers in the NBA, a player who averaged, I want to say 7 or 8 assists a night. I'll double check that really quickly. Where are you at, Darius? Yeah, 7 assists a night has always been a consistent 7 assists a night type of point guard, but was also low turnover in that rate as well, about 2 turnovers a night there last season, which is a good assist to turnover ratio if you're counting that at home. I believe that's 3.5 assists to a turnover each night. Garland also just adds a lot more value as far as uh, getting to the rim. He's not somebody that's going to attempt too many of those, and I think uh, that's an issue regarding this offense. Regarding their guards, there's a lot of reliance on their jumpers, and I think that's definitely okay because Mitchell is definitely the creator there, and I think Garland thrives better in a catch and shoot scenario as far as shooting goes. He graded out as an A graded catch and shoot 3-point shooter last year for Cleveland, but definitely has the gravity to be a threat on the ball and attract opposing defenses, and I think that works out really nicely for a player like himself, like Donovan Mitchell. And as far as his playmaking goes, I think you definitely have something there as far as playmaking. I'm trying to find his statistics there. If I'm able to find it, graded out lowest as like an A minus graded passer, but really good on ball gravity. Somebody that is able to be a threat as a lob passer, somebody that creates efficient shots for others. And I think that just comes with him being the shooting threat that he is. You only nitpick his overall size defensively, which he can't really change, but you can definitely nitpick the finishing around the rim, which is something that will need to be added to one of those two players' games to keep defenses honest. Otherwise, I think there is avenues to where opposing defenses, perhaps like the New York Knicks, would go ahead and place on him, lead him to the rim often. That could definitely be an issue, but for sure, one of the best backcourts in all of basketball, offensively speaking. Both of them, I talk about their defensive deficiencies, especially regarding their size, but they are heavily manned as far as their big men go. Take a look at the likes of an Evan Mobley, who I want to talk a little bit more extensively, a player who was the number 3 overall pick back in 2021, a player who was regarded as one of the best defensive prospects to come out of the draft in a long time as far as bigs go. And he came onto the scene pretty early as a player who I really, really liked defensively, averaged about 2 blocks a night, a steal a night in his rookie year. I remember I was on a radio show. I was co-hosting a radio show with some of my college friends back at Arizona State, and I made a statement saying that if he continues to go on this upward trajectory, defensively speaking, he'll be the next Tim Duncan. Now, that was definitely hyperbolic of me to say. I think it's very much a stretch, but I don't think that it takes away anything as far as his defense at all. Evan Mobley is one of the best defenders in all of basketball. If I'm remembering correctly, he was the defensive player of the year. I do want to double check that. A lot of stuff has happened over the last couple of months, so forgive me for forgetting some aspects of his accolades. He was an All-NBA second team player last year, first-time All-Star, and he was the defensive player of the year last year. And rightfully so. He was a player who averaged what is that? 2 blocks and a steal a night, and had one of the best plus minuses as far as his defensive rating goes. And I would definitely have to double check that soon. But he was definitely a player who made his impact felt on that side of the ball. He's also a player who's been pretty healthy throughout a majority of his career. 269 games played through the first 4 seasons of his career. Something that I really like about him, his durability. A lot better than Darius Garland's, that is for sure. But the biggest calling card for Evan Mobley the last several years has been the offense. His first 3 years, it was always a very solid offensive option, averaging about 16 points a night in his first 3 seasons. But there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis on getting his shots there, being a focal point in the offense. They tried a little bit to do some floor spacing with him those first 3 years, but they only really had him in the catch and shoot scenarios there, almost being a lost cause offensively as far as the emphasis on getting him the ball. He's 6'11" with a very long wingspan. He's definitely on the skinnier side, but there is good offensive touch around for him in the post that allows for him to be a little bit more of a threat offensively and to be utilized better. And I think that's been the main gripe when it comes to JB Bickerstaff, the former head coach here for Cleveland. those first 3 years of Mobley's career, just not a big emphasis on getting him his touches. And I think this year there was a bit of a transcendence as far as not just his overall impact on the offensive side of the ball, but Mobley was handling the ball and initiating a lot more, bringing the ball up, being way more confident in his ability to get to the rim, and I think was very efficient in that regard. Him bringing the ball up the floor is a product of what Kenny Atkinson was really trying to implement for this Cleveland Cavaliers team. He had wanted him to be a little bit more of a facilitator, which made him get away from being this catch and shoot threat, which he has become this year. He attempted the most 3-point attempts in his career at 3 attempts a night, which is up from his average of about 1 a night, and shot 37% on those threes last year. Really became a threat as far as floor spacing goes. Not high volume, but somebody who is able to knock it down very capably. And he has the shooting mechanics there to continue to be this 3-4 3-point attempts per night type of player. They had him initiate a lot as far as like going out in transition, getting these defensive rebounds, pushing the pace, and it led to an increase in drives per game, and it allowed for him to have way more of an on-ball role than he did in previous years, where he was just cast off as a catch-and-shoot guy. And you saw an increase in shot attempts per game. He attempted 13 of them a night last year and shot very efficiently, 56% from the field, which is something that's really nice for a player who definitely relies a little bit on his little mid-range shots in the paint, and those 3-point attempts as well. Having a higher volume of 3-point attempts lowers, for the most part, your field goal percentage, especially if you shoot a ton of them. And that really wasn't the case. He was still a very efficient and very effective player, offensively speaking. And defense, he grades out really well there as well, being really good as a threat that can play up on screen and rolls and has the length to be bothersome if you're going to have him play in a drop, which I wouldn't always have him in a drop. I think the one player that you can is Jarrett Allen, and I think that's another conversation that we'll get to in a couple minutes here. But rim protection, graded out as an A+ graded rim protector, A+ graded rim disruptor, A+ graded rim deterrent in the paint, being somebody that becomes very bothersome if you have to take a shot over him. The one thing that you can nitpick on his defense is that he is on the weaker side, 6'11", 215 pounds, has the length to continue to be bothersome, but is somebody that can be bullied a little bit. Maybe adding a little bit more mass to his frame would play a benefit as far as his defense in the paint goes. Otherwise, the defense is really nice. You can have him in the paint. You can definitely have him switched out on the perimeter. He can move pretty solidly there, has the length to do so, and has the agility to do so there. Not the preferred option, but somebody that can really put up some really good contests in those isolation situations. His offensive transcendence is going to continue to come in the form of being more confident in his half-court sets. It was something that was definitely improved upon last year, and I think that just stemmed from the fact that he was pushing it out on the break and in transition often, but being in the half court and being a creator in those scenarios, I think will add a different dimension of offense here, to where it becomes a lot harder to guard, 2-point guards that are able to score really solidly. Garland being able to be a float game master, and Donovan Mitchell being the shot creator on the perimeter that he is, but doing everything in the half court and perhaps doing a little bit more in the high posts and maybe some more off dribble shooting would play a benefit to the offense, be a lot more versatile and a lot more difficult to guard. As you can see around the league, having creators with size and length becomes a very difficult defensive task for opposing teams. And that's something that I would like to see out of Mobley's game, especially since he's on the younger side and has the time to develop that. Otherwise, really one of the best young players in the league in Evan Mobley, and somebody that I look forward to tracking his development this season as well. Now, we talk about the defense of Mobley and being somebody that's really special on that side of the ball. Jared Allen is on that same level of rim protector who's just not as versatile as him. And that's definitely okay because Jared Allen is very good at being placed around the rim. You take a look at where he's graded out as far as his defense goes on the interior. He is a player who is just really good with his length as well and knows how to be a disruptor. He was a player who averaged, I want to say, 2 blocks a night as well. And getting 2 blocks a night from both of your front court players at the power forward and center position is just such a luxury to have. 14 points, 10 boards, 2 assists, 71% from the field. Again, a lot of those coming from paint touches and lobs from Garland and Mitchell. Was a player who averaged really his blocks per game went down this past season just under a block a night, and the same thing you can go for steals, just under a steal a night, and that's a fascinating thing that I'm looking at that moment in time. And I think he's just more so just a disruptor as far as his length goes. He's 6'9", 7'2" wingspan, and a large body too at 243. Is not somebody that you can easily bang down low against. He graded out as a A+ post defender, which is better than the post defense that you were getting out of Evan Mobley. And I think again with Mobley, it's just going to be a matter of adding a little bit more mass to be able to hang with some of the stronger players, the stronger bigs in the NBA. But Allen did a really good job of being the post defensive threat there. And I think with Evan Mobley being a player who was tasked of guarding out on the perimeter a little bit more than some of the other traditional center/power forward molds, Allen played a lot of help side and weak side defense. Yeah, if you had Evan Mobley leading you to the paint, it was going to be towards Jared Allen. And what are you going to do trying to shoot over the top of 2 players with above 7-foot wingspans? That's a really difficult offensive task if you're the ball handler trying to get past Evan Mobley. Allen thrived in that role, being somebody that was a big enough threat to where you really didn't want to shoot over the top of him, and most didn't really at all. He was very effective in his drop defense, being somebody that was able to recover very solidly whenever there was a potential pass to his man, which is the screener. I really like Jared Allen's overall defensive impact on the court, even if the statistics really didn't show the way that I was expecting it to, as far as the interior goes. Now, again, this is a player that you don't really want switched out on the perimeter all that often, and I think it's why they made it a point at this deadline to bring in a player like DeAndre Hunter, and we'll get to him real soon here too. But Jared Allen, a really good defensive option there that ultimately needs to show it in the playoffs as well. He was a player that saw a drop-off in his shot attempts a night from 8 a night last year to 6 a night in the postseason. The points per game went down by a point, and was a player who very much was played off of the court a little bit more, only averaged 29 minutes a night in his 9 games with Cleveland last year. And I think in some moments getting a lot less than one would hope. Those minutes went up a little bit more when he was playing against Indiana, but a lot of 25 minutes, 26 minutes, 20 minutes even in the Game 4 loss to Indiana, where he really just wasn't all that effective anywhere. And again, I think that comes with the fact that he's not an offensive creator for himself. He's not one to really get a bunch of touches on the offensive side of the ball as far as being in the post. He is somebody who's a very solid dunker spot, short roll center, somebody that you would rather just dump it off to, and somebody that can slip as far as his offensive role goes. He's not somebody that's going to wow you with legitimate post play. He has his spurts of doing so, but you don't really want him being a top 3 option when you have the 3 players that are the caliber of players that Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley are. still a solid, stable option as far as a legitimate inside presence, and his defensive impact goes way beyond the raw statistical stat sheet of steals and blocks a night. And I think as far as the wings go, that's going to be the calling card for this team. You take a look at your wing duo of Max Strus and DeAndre Hunter. And we'll begin with Max Strus. It's not the largest of conversations there, especially since he's going to be out the first couple of weeks, which it's a loss. It's a loss there. A very legitimate shooting threats throughout the large majority of his career. I want to take a look at his three-point percentages if I'm able to find Max Strus at all. 9 points a night, 44% from the field, 39% from three on about 6 attempts a night. As somebody who was a very good ancillary shooting piece, he had the shot attempts per game go down by about 3 from his first season in Cleveland to last season, and it just resulted in a spike in his efficiency on really every single front. 42% to 44% from the field, 35 to 39% from three, 79 to 82% from the free throw line. Just being somebody that can be a little bit more of an ancillary shooting option around Mitchell and Garland and really everybody else in that starting lineup, where there's not a ton of floor spacing, that you're getting out of Allen. And as good as the improvements have been with Mobley, that's a one season sample size, and we'll see if that is able to be replicated this upcoming season, which I expect it to, but not a guarantee at this moment in time, right? Max Strus is 6'5", so definitely an undersized wing, but somebody who graded out as a very solid defender there. He was way more of the wing stopper, and I think it just came with the fact that he's a much stronger looking player, is a broad-shouldered defender, about 215 pounds, somebody that is able to defend decently on that side of the ball. And that comes with somebody who is, 6'5", and I think is definitely a little bit more even as far as his wingspan goes. I actually do want to look up his wingspan. He was way more regarded as a shooting piece over at Miami, and that translated over 6.5 inch 6 feet 7 inch wingspan that he has. So definitely a little bit more even, and definitely a player who is a little bit more on the athletically deficient side. And it's not to say that he's not athletic, it's just a lot less than a lot of the other wings that he's facing up against. And he did pretty solid in those areas as far as perimeter isolation goes, being somebody that didn't really stick to screens often. You definitely want to play the passing lanes more, but I think that's more of a stat that comes and gets graded out higher if you have a longer wingspan, and he just doesn't have that in his physical traits at this moment in time. But a very legitimate shooting threat that doesn't get the greatest shot quality as far as his three-point shooting attempts go, but he has the gravity there too. Not somebody that you can leave open at all. And they're going to be missing that to start the season. But I think that's okay, given that you are going to have an increase in size in the form of DeAndre Hunter. He came over from the Atlanta Hawks, was the 4th overall pick 6 years ago. He didn't really develop all that much as far as his shot creation goes, and it led to him being somebody who would probably be graded out as somebody with a $80 to $90 million contract, somebody that's a very legitimate 3-and-D option, nothing that we'd be able to deny. But as far as his creation goes, it was a concern for a while. And last year, a lot of that changed for him. He was a little bit more of an on-ball role next to Trae Young and Dyson Daniels to begin the season last year, and he was playing really well, averaging close to 20 points a night, if I'm remembering correctly, over in Atlanta. I'll double check that. Yeah, he averaged 19 points a night, which is a 4-point increase as far as his career high goes, and somebody who has taken a lot more shots than he did than ever before. He was averaging 13 shots a night, averaging those on 46, 39, 86 shooting splits. He gets traded over to Cleveland. He doesn't start too many games there, but the efficiency went up. 49, 43, 82 shooting splits, 14 points a night, and a little bit more of a lower usage role, but that's sort of a given your top three options on the offensive side of the ball. A very legitimate shooting option, and that has always been throughout his career. But you go ahead and you go into the playoffs, and it's just not the same impact than in prior games. His highest scoring game in the playoffs this past year was at 21 points, but he was pretty much gone during that loss and that elimination by the Indiana Pacers, only scoring 12 points as the most that he had scored in that series, but featured games of 5 points, 8 points, 11 points, and really seeing a drop off in his minutes as the series was going on, from 30 to 21 to 16, then back up to 30 when it was a little bit closer of a game there. Then he gets hurt, misses game 5. No, that was game 5. He missed game 2 with an injury, and he came back and he really did not look the part really at all. But is a player who is going to be thrust into that starting wing spot. He is a player who, to begin the season, will likely be the number 3 option. Will probably play a little bit more of a on-ball creator for that offense that's not going to have Garland to start and not going to have Max Strus. So we could definitely see a little bit more of a 17, 18 point per game type of season to begin the season. He very much graded out as somebody who was very solid as far as defense goes. A- graded player in perimeter ISO defense, and that's something that had been his calling card for the entirety of his career. Very solid screen navigator as well, graded out as a B+ graded player there. And being somebody who was decent as far as rim protection goes. He's a lot stronger of a wing, and you can see it in his build, 6'8", 221 pounds, and somebody that you can play at the 4 in spurts. You definitely want him at the 3 and guarding players who are, I would say, are bigger forwards. So having him guard the likes of LeBron. Aaron Gordon is a guy that I namely think of mainly because of his overall strength. He can match that strength in a potential matchup there. Julius Randle, perhaps, he has the strength necessary to do those types of things there. He'll be very important to the immediate start for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now they don't have that Isaac Okoro piece as far as just having straight defense there, but I don't think that's going to be too much of a loss as far as Okoro goes. But you are going to feel the loss of Ty Jerome, a player who, again, was a 6th Man of the Year candidate last year, really looked the part as a ball handler and somebody who was able to really carry the offense in spurts. If you watch him enter the game in the fourth quarter, he would enter the game in the fourth quarter at the beginning of the quarter while Garland rests for a little, or Mitchell, whichever player is there. There will be spurts of him just going on a heater, going on 3-4 straight made threes in that fourth quarter, and at that point the game would be over because he had just built up such a lead for Cleveland that there was really no point in bringing either of those guys back into the game. It was such a luxury for them to have somebody who was as efficient as Ty Jerome was as far as his shooting goes, and as a playmaker. He was definitely solid there and has always been throughout the entirety of his career. He goes to Memphis, and you're not going to have that sort of spark plug bench option anymore. So at least for the start of the season, you're relying on a backcourt that features Lonzo Ball and Sam Merrill. Lonzo Ball came back last year after missing the last 2 seasons due to injury, and as expected to me, didn't really play all that well. Played in about 35 games and really shot it inefficiently. 36% from the field on 7 attempts a night, 34% from 3, 82% from the free throw line, which is nice that he was able to shoot his free throws well. 8 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, a steal a night. Him being a player to expect to get back to form would be it would be a strong ask of Cleveland to ask for him to be that same 14 point per game, 7 assist type of player on strong efficiency. I don't think you're expecting that at this stage of his career. I mean, 2 years worth of sitting out and uh, having the knee cartilage issue that he had for those 2 years being out. It's very hard to bounce back from that. There is definitely those glimpses of good catch and shoot play, and he has uh, been a better catch and shoot 3 point shooter for the latter part of his career, particularly in those last 2 years where he was healthy with New Orleans and with Chicago. Before this upcoming season or this past season, he was definitely a better movement shooter there, somebody that was heavily relied on in those areas. And I want to see that there. And he was definitely a solid pull-up shooter. Definitely played out very okay there. But again, you're not going to expect too much as far as his shot creation goes. He doesn't really have the gravity there like he did just a few seasons ago. And that's just the unfortunate reality of at this stage of his career. You'll still have the good spurts of good perimeter defensive play. You don't really want him in those high leverage defensive matchups at this stage anymore, unless he shows you otherwise. But you'll get your solid playmaking from him, your solid rebounding, solid defensive play. The one thing that you would like to see from him, as far as his overall offensive impact, if he's not going to be able to create his own shot often and not be an efficient scorer from the perimeter, he's got to have a semblance of an inside game, which was something that he really didn't do a good job of in his return last year. And I think rightfully so. You're trying to put out a feeler as far as the type of defensive attention that you are going to get and the physicality that's going to come with playing again after missing 2 years, but was really not good as far as finishing goes. Graded out as an F-graded player as far as rim field goal percentage goes, as well as rim shot making, finishing talent, and um, drawn fouls as far as driving to the rim goes. He just needs to be better at finishing around the rim. He's 6'6" and has the length to be a solid finisher around the rim. That's just got to be a better part of his game, because as much as I talk about Ty Jerome and his overall shooting ability and his shot creation off the bench last year, he was also somebody that was able to get to his floater really solidly. He was able to really snake pick and rolls and get off quality shots at the rim or around the rim, and did so very solidly. Lonzo would have to very much improve in that aspect if he's not going to be able to make the same scoring, shooting impact that he did during his best years of his career. I wouldn't bank on him being the Ty Jerome of this team, but Lonzo can definitely still make a substantial impact as far as his size, playmaking, rebounding goes. And then I talked about Sam Merrill as well, a player who, if I'm remembering correctly, was like the 60th pick by Milwaukee, I want to say, 4 years ago. I want that to be double checked. Yeah, the 60th pick 5 years ago. Came out of Utah State as essentially a shooter, and that's what he has been for his career. He looked the part as that in his first year in Milwaukee, 45% from three. And in less games, he only played in 11 games in total the next 2 seasons. Obviously, those numbers go way down. And in consistent minutes for the last 2 years, where he had been getting about 18 minutes a night, played in about 132 total games, shot 41% from the field and a combined 38% from three. And he shoots a lot of threes. He attempts about 5 or 6 3-pointers a night for the last 2 seasons for Cleveland. He signs a larger deal this year and is looking to cement himself as a key rotation player, the player who will make up for the shooting loss that comes with Ty Jerome. Sam Merrill usually plays in an off-ball shooting role, and to that, it's very much rightfully so. Look at the players that are ahead of him, and even with the likes of Ty Jerome, you definitely wanted him to have the ball in his hands more than Sam Merrill. But you had him a lot as a catch-and-shoot shooter or somebody that was coming off of a lot of screens, effectively playing the Max Strus role as far as shooting goes. Sam Merrill was definitely solid in the shooting department there. If you're not going to get the creation from Lonzo Ball, you definitely have a level of expectation of him in Sam Merrill being somebody that can shoot a little bit more off of the dribble as well. He came off of a lot of screens last year and was very effective in those situations, but making up for the shooting talent that you're losing with Ty Jerome, it's going to be important for Merrill to be able to match that if he's not going to be able to do anything else. Because defensively, he's definitely not the greatest player there. Somebody who is on the lighter side as well, 6'4", 205 pounds, definitely small there. Very good in a chaser role, similar to how the other guards on this team play, but is somebody who will definitely get picked on due to his size and very much smaller frame. Somebody that can be physical in spurts, but he will get overpowered in spurts as well. So you definitely have questions within that backcourt there at this moment in time. And then you have a second-year player in Jalen Tyson that's certainly waiting there for a little bit. Only played in 47 games last year and about 10 minutes a night. He came into the draft last year as somebody who was a very solid shot creator during his time at Cal. Had very good footwork, a very impressive handle, and he has very legitimate defensive effort. And I think that his defensive effort was going to allow him to get minutes early on if he was able to catch on early. Him adding a little bit more bulk was something that I was concerned about. Him being as skinny as he is as far as wings go, I think that his overall play strength that he had in college, I figured wasn't going to translate over to the NBA given the physical traits that the other players in the league have. He has sneaky athleticism. It's not the greatest in the world. Him as an off-ball player, I was most fascinated to see because he played a lot of on-ball over it at Cal, and he has the shot creation skills and the creation skills necessary to make his jumpers and whatnot, but never really operated much as a catch and shoot guy. I viewed him a lot in the form of like a Kentavious Caldwell Pope, given his size and defensive effort and his shooting ability, but him being able to convert some of that creation ability into a little bit more of a modernized catch and shoot off ball role will be fascinating to see, given the amount of options that are going to be ahead of him on the offensive side of the ball. But I do think that he should have some ball handling duties there too, as in Kenny Atkinson's system. He is a player who I think has a very good handle and somebody that is able to do a little bit of everything. And perhaps this is the option that we don't see coming as far as the Ty Jerome replacement here in Cleveland. But a player that is on the younger side, is only entering his second season at 22 years old, going to be 23 in December. That's a player that you should definitely keep your eyes out for, a player who can definitely make an impact given his overall creation and handle ability. As far as your other players go, it's not too many great players. I mean, Thomas Bryant is going to be your backup center, 6'9", 250 pounds, a very solid offensive option, and is a decent floor spacer for his size as well. Always has been during his time over with Miami and over at Indiana, where he was attempting a lot more threes there and more willing to do so as far as being able to adapt to the transition, as far as having a lot of your bigs being able to space the floor at least a little bit. Definitely a defensive problem, doesn't really move his feet all that well. Definitely a player you're going to have to play in a drop defense. And as far as your defensive pieces go, you would definitely prefer for a lot more switches and a lot more switchability within your defensive personnel. And Bryant really doesn't fit that at that moment in time, which is why you have the likes of a Larry Nance Jr. and a Dean Wade here in the wickets. Larry Nance Jr., again, didn't really play all that much last year for Atlanta. There was a lot of center options there. Only played in 24 games, 19 minutes a night. Didn't really finish around the rim as well as he did in previous series. His percentages from 2 years ago, which was a 61% field goal percent player, went down 10% to 51. And this is somebody that doesn't really space the floor too much. He was a player who last year was spacing the floor way more than he did at any point in his NBA career, at about 3 attempts a night, and shot it very solidly there at about 44%. But again, this is in a low minutes role, a low volume role, and ultimately in a small sample size of about 20 games. It's not something that you can entirely rely on, but has the switchability, has always had the athleticism to his name, which will be a lot better. Having these two options as your backup big options, as far as him and Thomas Bryant go, feels a lot more stable than the backup center options that you had last year in the form of Tristan Thompson. And I'm trying to remember who was another big on that team last year. Give me 1 second as I try to look that up. But as far as I'm remembering, you take a look at what's his face's name? You take a look at Tristan Thompson, and he didn't really get too many minutes there, and rightfully so. He's not that great of a player at this stage of his career as far as finishing and defense goes. And there really wasn't anybody else. That's kind of surprising that they didn't bring in more size at that center position. I like that they were able to bring in DeAndre Hunter, though. I really did like that move. And then Dean Wade is another player here as well, a player who is on a 3-year contract, I believe, at this stage of his career. 28 years old, 6'9", has his spurts of really looking like a Gallinari as far as having a good handle, being able to space the floor very solidly in a low minute role there at about 20 minutes a night as well. Shot 36% on his threes last year at about 4 a night. Being somebody that is also switchable. He can move his feet very solidly. You don't really necessarily want him at this point of attack defensive role, but is somebody that has made a name for himself for being very versatile in his overall defensive play. And I think it's why he's been able to stick around here over in Cleveland and ultimately getting a larger role as his career has gone on. Yeah, I mean, you take a look at his perimeter ISO defense, graded as an A- graded perimeter isolation defender, and being somebody that doesn't stick to screens really at all, somebody who was graded out as an A+ graded ball screen navigator. Very solid wing option there, but can be picked on in spurts, especially if you have him switched out onto some of the more quicker wings in the NBA. Definitely is deserving of his 20 minutes a night, but maybe not somebody you have in those high leverage playoff situations. And he really hasn't throughout his career over at Cleveland, playing in about 15 minutes a night last year. Very much wasn't efficient for this team at all in the playoffs. Maybe him being able to be used as a contract to trade away for an improvement to, as far as your wings go, or maybe a creator goes, wouldn't be the worst of options in the world. The one player that I do want to highlight before we move on to our coach and begin to wrap up this episode, Tyrese Proctor. He was a player that I really liked coming out of the draft last year. Reminded me a lot of like a Derek White, Andrew Nembhard type of prospect. He would have been my pick if Phoenix was taking him at pick 41, but he falls to 49, and he's just a really polished player who became a lot more stable as a overall guard. He came in as a point guard for Duke and a little bit more erratic in his play, but he developed into being a very smooth shooter, a steady playmaker who can stand out in pick and roll situations, and just a really good, intelligent, pro-ready, defensive-minded player. He is a lighter frame at 183 pounds, which, you know, it does leave him pretty vulnerable to some of the stronger guards in the NBA. He often avoids contact and somebody who struggles at finishing around the rim. But his value very much lies in his plug-and-play ability to be a great shooter on the ball and off the ball, and somebody who is able to guard 1 through 3. And I think that plays a value given that there really isn't this very many lengthy, sizable guards on this team that's able to do that for the guard rotation at all. I'm not expecting him to get too many minutes here, but I definitely did want to shout him out because I really like Tyrese Proctor, and I think that if he's able to maintain his shooting and his finishing, you can definitely see him potentially being of that mold of Andrew Nembhard and Derek White. I'm very much looking forward to tracking his development throughout the rest of his career. A really talented offensive team. It really is. This is my number 1 rated offense, especially when you look at how everybody is schemed up as far as the dispersion and how they're able to get their shots in the form of unlocking Evan Mobley, being able to manipulate the space that you have when you have Garland or Mitchell running pick and rolls with Mobley or Allen. I think they've done a really good job at manipulating that space and creating scoring advantages for any of those players. They are really talented offensively speaking. They come in as my number 3 ranked defense. This is a team that is going to be very heavily reliant on Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, and that's rightfully so. They are two of the most talented defensive bigs in all of basketball, but you can definitely have your issues regarding the size of this team and really seeing how effective that those players can be in perimeter defensive settings, especially in high leverage situations in the playoffs, which we haven't really seen a whole lot of great defense on the perimeter as far as their guards and wings go when they have made the playoffs together. It's definitely a wait and see, but Mobley and Allen carry this defensive rating. And they also have the 3rd ranked head coach in my ranking in Kenny Atkinson, coming in and really creating a much more balanced system that prides itself on everybody being able to bring the ball up, everybody being able to do everything offensively speaking. It is something that had allowed for a former team in the Brooklyn Nets, his previous coached team, when he was the head coach, allowing everybody to get their share. And it allowed everybody to be extremely productive in the minutes that they got. It's why you saw them be very competitive 7 years ago in a season where it was just D'Angelo Russell as your number 1 option. They were a really fun team because everybody was able to really feed off of each other well, being players who were able to create shots for themselves, for others, have an equal dispersion there. He has really developed a very nice system here that allows for the best to come out of Evan Mobley. And I think that was going to be the task for Kenny Atkinson when he got this job. And he's done that so far. There's a little bit more evolution as far as his game goes and the game of basketball goes. But I think that he's done a good job so far there. And I think that he's done a really good job of turning Garland and Mitchell into passable defenders in the regular season. Again, the playoffs is still going to be a question mark to me as far as their performance, but Atkinson has done a really good job at bringing the best out of them as far as defense goes, and he has looked the part as a really elite head coach in the NBA after last season. He comes in as my number 3 ranked head coach, and ultimately they come in as my number 1 ranked team number 3 ranked team in all of basketball. And let me know what you guys think about where this Cleveland Cavaliers is going to end up this season. Will they end up being the Eastern Conference champions? Will they bow out in the second round like how they have in previous seasons with Donovan Mitchell? Which one will take get them over the hump? How will they get over the hump in an Eastern Conference that is now going to run through Cleveland? And that's going to be the end of this episode. I'm going to have my number 2 ranked team be released tomorrow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on YouTube. Again, I look forward to doing a little bit more YouTube episodes as these next couple of episodes come out. I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode. Again, please leave a like if you're watching on YouTube, or please leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to share this with everybody that you know that are basketball fans. Let's try to get this series out there for the people who are excited for this upcoming NBA season. Again, I appreciate you guys for listening and watching this episode, and I look forward to talking more ball with you guys soon.